reiterate is the safety and security aspect of Jozi My Jozi is going to be interlinked with the firm. The firm is the implementing body essentially for that safety and security strategy. I know that we have presented in the past, so I'm not going to go too much into the background of the firm in terms of this grouping, but we'll just give a little bit of an overview and then speak to some of the activities that we've identified and been working on. So I think just as a very brief introduction, the firm is a not-for-profit company. It was established to provide a collective brain trust with regard to the private sector stakeholders related to law enforcement. Our kind of core function is looking at collective collaborative partnership to tackle issues of crime, physical and social disorder, urban and community decay, so that we can create a safe and secure city. So our vision, mission, and value statement is there. I'm not going to go through all of it. It's all quite straightforward, and we'll share these slides with Katie as well after the meeting to distribute. But I think the key thing here is about creating partnerships and community in our solutions. Just very quickly, some of our stakeholders and partners, and I think to reiterate again a statement Wayne had said, we are intrinsically reliant on CIDs to implement on the ground. The firm is an overarching structure and body, and we're trying to provide support and strategy and best practice, but we recognize the critical role that the CIDs play on the ground as the first response, as the first point of call for those neighborhoods and those communities. And that is something that we build into our operational structure and planning. So this just goes into some of that kind of detailed operational framework. So our approach is looking at how we build solutions with some core pillars, looking at what our operations are, what are the technologies, what are the manpowers, and what is the collaboration that's necessary to make all of that work. So when we look at how we go into a neighborhood level, in our operating framework, we are strongly rooted in identifying the stakeholder departments that are necessary. SAPS, JMPD, EMS are critical in terms of addressing issues of safety within the city. But we've recognized that those bodies have historically had issues with integration and collaboration, resource shortage, lack of enabling structures and support, and the reality of bureaucracy having a lack of flexibility to adequately adapt and respond to new threats quickly. So what we're trying to say is, how do we as private role players address these issues? And what we're saying is that, you know, it's really important to have partnerships and relationships with these entities because they're mandated and they have authority, but we have experience and ability that we can bring to the table that shifts the way that we respond to certain issues. So when we look at this framework, we've said who are the stakeholders and role players that are necessary in developing the solution, who starts to participate on the ground when we're looking at implementation, and that relates to the participants identified there. What are the tools that we can utilize and the technologies that are optional that we can start exploring and testing within those spaces? And then we start identifying what are those resources in a given neighborhood? How many SAPs patrol vehicles are there? What is the CCTV? What are the cameras that are there? What are the tactical response? So that we can start developing solutions based on those resources that are available and identifying gaps within those spaces. And then when we look at our targets, we're obviously, when we've got CCTV, how do we coordinate response? How do we identify hotspots and monitor those? How do we address issues of visible policing, both from a policing and law enforcement as well as private security? How do we address issues of bylaw enforcement and traffic management? And then when we have instances of emergency, whether it be medical or fire, how do we address issues of first response? So these are some of the kind of grassroots responses that we're trying to identify within our spaces when we're developing solutions in a given neighborhood. And this is very much the approach that is going to be applied within that phase 0 that Wayne had indicated, to say, what do we have in the space? How are we optimizing it? And how is it supposed to function? When we have all of this information, we can then develop necessary operating procedures and operational plans within those given spaces to start addressing some of the issues that are occurring. Some of the work that we as the firm have done and our kind of key pillars of what it is that we're doing at the moment, critical to this is the war room. So this is a weekly meeting that we hold with all of our members and constituents to share risks, concerns facing our stakeholders in the different environments that they're in. So this includes national and international incidents which could create disruption. So whether it be court cases or fuel shortages or the pandemic, all of those types of key bits of information are shared in terms of the potential risk they pose to our environments. We look at local issues and risks and incidents. So that's looking at crime trends, power disruption, service delivery issues. We're identifying protests and civil actions which are causing disruption, and we're identifying any projects or work streams within those sessions that might need further attention. So these meetings are held weekly, as I indicated, and we are open to beyond just kind of our direct members. We open this up because we feel that it is incredibly important to be sharing as much information as possible. The more information we have, the better we can engage with our law enforcement partners about the realities on the ground in these different environments. Our key areas at the moment in terms of the war rooms, in terms of our continuous representation, are our kind of key chapters or nodes. So that's the Johannesburg inner city, the Rosebank CBD and the Sandton CBD. We have had some representation from stakeholders in Pretoria and some from Ridgeside in Mpumalanga as well, who join us occasionally to share some of that information about what they're experiencing. And we also then have a Telegram group where we're sharing all of this information consistently as well. So where we've had protests, where we've had fires, where we've had any of those types of incidents occurring, we're sharing that information as it becomes available to us. And what this also is that although we've got a standing meeting, when we find that there's been a major incident, we call for emergency war rooms so that we can share information. In the instance of the Albert Street fire, we coordinated with Red Cross to deal with the emergency response and first response and disaster relief as a result of coming together and sharing this information. So it is a really critical structure that we have as the firm, because it's our mechanism to coordinate, and it's our first point of call to be able to share information and communicate with one another. Sorry, Wayne, did you want to add something on that?
No, Mikhaela, thank you very much.
So just some of the incidents that we're getting out of that, and this is just a very quick snapshot. With that war room, we're getting incidents reported to us by all the different stakeholders. This allows us to paint a picture of what's going on and start identifying trends within given areas. This is particularly related to crime incidents. And with this information, we're then able to go and have conversations with the district commander from the SAPS and other key role players in law enforcement to say, this is the trends that we're picking up. We're seeing this within this given area, and we can start identifying solutions in partnership with them to address these particular issues. I'll go into that in a little bit more detail shortly. So I think just in terms of a quick overview from our sorry, and I see I'll view very quick. I'm not going to go into this best practice, but that just gives a little bit of an overview of where it is, the different activities that we have identified. What I did want to go into was this one specifically. So I think out of the information that has been reported to us, we have picked up, particularly in the inner city, it is part of that phase 0 area that has been identified by Jozi, but there has been a spike of armed robberies and robberies within that core area, on that retail area of the inner city. As a result of that, we have now coordinated with the SAPS under the banner of their Boya Mtetwa projects to develop a sector policing approach within that given area. We're being driven by CIMAC, which is crime intelligence, in terms of identifying the hotspots, the trends. We're working with private security, CPF patrollers, and the SAPS to coordinate block patrols within that space. We've gotten motorbikes within those space from the SAPS to help patrol those areas. We're identifying and monitoring hotspots, and we're trying to get as much information as possible to understand the back end of those crimes that are occurring, to identify perpetrators and look at how we can actually get these guys off the ground with our goal of eradicating crime rather than just pushing it along to the next neighborhood. So very quickly, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but we are also looking at an MOU with the Public Safety Department. But quite critically, again, as it links to the Jozi My Jozi, we are looking at the safe corridors. So this is given off the back of Elaine's traffic light adoption project that she initiated in Sandton. We've been engaging with the JRA to look at how we develop corridors. So particularly, for instance, linking Oxford Rivonia from Sandton into the CBD, getting as many of those lights adopted as possible so we can have a free flow of traffic, because we are aware that when we have traffic congestion, that can inevitably result in increased crime trends, smash and grab, and those types of incidents occurring. Where we've got pockets, we're also looking at how we deploy guardians, engaging with the JMPD where we're necessary to put traffic wardens to deal with traffic congestion. And again, I'm not going to go into too much detail. We are working on different technologies and looking at how we can apply them within our particular spaces, such as drones, CCTV, and other solutions. And that's me. Sorry, Anne. Might have taken too long.
No, it's wonderful, and there's just so much to share and tell. I felt that in particular Wayne was more than a bit pushed there on Jozi My Jozi. Let's get your face up, Wayne and Mikhaela, and take an opportunity for questions. But before I say so, what I am delighted at is that everything is sort of coming together. So we've got the SIDS, we've got the firm, we've got the homelessness network, we've got JICP, we've got, so and the SAPS programs and everything coming together, because historically, I'm sure you'll know, that always worries me that everybody's hugely enthusiastic but rushing off in their own direction. So that's great. Let's take questions from the floor. These, I think the presentation will be circulated. And we've got some people in here immediately. So Andrew, wonderful. And then Yale thereafter. We'll probably have more. Thank you.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks, Mikhaela. It's great, as Anne says, to start to see this coordination taking place with everybody's activities. And I wish you well with your plans and implementation. Wayne, just in terms of your pillars, there's one pillar I feel that perhaps you want to consider, and that would be environmental. It's, I believe, an important aspect of the CBD, particularly in light of the infrastructural failures that we're seeing and the resultant pollution that is flowing into the Yuxkay and Klip rivers, for example. Yeah. And I believe it is an aspect that should perhaps come into your pillars and should be an action area. The CBD has a massive impact, not only in terms of its own environment, but also surrounding environments. And I think it may be something you want to consider. Mikhaela, in terms, sorry, Wayne.
Andrew, under the firm banner, I'm not sure if you picked up on Mikhaela's presentation. We've got safety, security, disaster management, crisis management, all part of that whole space. But I hear you loud and clear. We need to move that in a pillar of its own, because it's the result of not keeping an eye on the ball, that we could be damaging the environment while we're fixing things, and we might just miss that. Thank you very much. I'll definitely put that on.
Thanks very much. And I think it's also creating that environment within the CBD, which is conducive to a pleasant place to be, and projects on that nature. Mikhaela, in terms of the partnerships, the one thing that concerns me, and I see there's a lot of work with the JMPD EMS, IDP inclusion of your partnerships and recognition. The challenge we face is, while the officials are very much on board and working with us in a great way, when it gets to the political level, we have problems because of priorities. And I think it's important that we ensure that we support the officials in motivating what we need in terms of capital projects or operational expenses included in the budget. Otherwise, your partnership is going to be very one-sided. So I think it's important that they're doing the budgeting now. I don't know if Tandeka is in. She was supposed to be coming in on the IDP, but I think it's important that the work you're doing is reflected in the IDP, in some sort of partnership, and particularly in your budgets, your CapEx and OpEx. But thanks very much. It's great stuff, guys.
Mikhaela, I'm sure you're just nodding yes in agreement. So we'll take Yale's hand and then Carolyn Mitchell.
Well done to the team, because it really is gaining enormous gravitas, and it's wonderful to see the plans unfold. On Andrew's point, which I was going to actually talk about, is that I was going to put energy and environment together, because the energy issue is great. We had conversations with certain Jozi, my Jozi, about looking, you know, for warehouse roofs in order to get solar power kind of things. But look, I just think that you can't be everything to everybody. But from an energy perspective, that is one of the most serious sustainability issues facing our city. And it's not only the inner city, it's everywhere. And then purely, and I don't want an answer now, but when we interfaced with the Jozi, my Jozi team, there was an absolute focus on both bridges, the Queen Elizabeth Bridge. And I see that falling off. It worries me, only because that's where most of our incidents are happening, and also because it's more difficult. So when I see Nelson Mandela Bridge, I'm very pleased because the iconography needs to come back. But I do please ask that we don't forget that the Queen Elizabeth Bridge is more difficult. Okay, thanks very much indeed.
Yale, just to answer your question on Queen Elizabeth, in the month of November, the cleanup project, in terms of clearing up the whole phase one, Queen Elizabeth Bridge falls in smack bang in that, and we're tackling that on the 22nd. So that's going to be with Liberty, FNB, Standard Bank, taxi associations, and if Wits wants to join us, more than welcome.
I've written to Mikhaela about joining everything. Okay, thanks very much. All the best. Bye.
Everybody's too fast for me for my thumbs. Carolyn, I see we've got Andrew again, and Katie Tandeka is trying to join us. Meanwhile, Carolyn, onwards.
Thank you. And I'm wondering if we can add energy, environment and transport to those pillars. You know, I believe Joburg has just signed a low emissions areas agreement, one of these international, I don't know, COP or, you know, one of these accords, I'm not too sure which one. And it is Transport Month. So I think it's extremely important that one of the main, one of the focuses of this Jozi My Jozi project is to get people more involved and using public transport better, and getting the city to actually recognize that their streets are not just for cars. I've been trying my very hardest to observe Transport Month, and I can safely say that walking anywhere in the city is a nightmare. Your pavements are, you know, the pavements are in really poor condition, and cycling is, it's dangerous. So if we could put that on the project list and make it a focus of Jozi My Jozi, I'd really appreciate it. And then Wayne, I'm probably going to have to get in contact with you, but Rosebank would really like to support the inner city with the Jozi My Jozi project and actually develop projects around it and get our corporates and stakeholders involved in the Adopt a Project program as well. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think Rosebank was on your list there, Wayne, and that's just great. I'll give you a chance to respond, but let's take Andrew. Andrew, can you be, I don't know, I'm always doing this.
I'll be quick. I'm going to add to the list again. energy is important, transport is important, but I think water is probably even more important because we don't have any resources. We have only got one source, and that is what's coming out of our rivers and dams. And we've got huge water issues, pollution problems. So let's just add it all to you. Thanks, guys.
So any more hands here? Was that Mikhaela's hand? Are you dying to get in? Come in.
Yeah, so I think I think it's very much off the back of what's come out with energy and water, and Wayne didn't use his favorite word today, which is resilience. And I think the underlying pillar for anything that we're doing is looking at how we're going to be building sustainable solutions. And I think a lot of what has come out of these additional pillars is very much about the resilience of the solutions that we're developing, and that they are contextually appropriate. And I think that that's part of why the Jozi My Jozi approach has been, let's take it one bite at a time, and let's focus on a particular space rather than, oh, we're going to go and do everything, because we need to be contextually responsive to that space. And that pilot space that we've got for phase 0 or phase 1 is very much about that. And I think a lot of these concerns are very much underlying in the solutions that we've developed, but we'll definitely work on how we can communicate that more in how we're presenting the information, because it's definitely part of the thinking. Water resilience is critical. When we think of it as safety, how are we going to put fires out if we don't have water? How are we going to, if we don't have electricity, we don't have water because the pumps don't work. So we're very conscious of that risk. And I think very much in terms of the space that we operate, because it's risk, energy and water are critical to that. But the environmental space and the environmental design is also how it's almost fit into that pillar as well. Because if I can't walk on a pavement, it's not safe. I can't, if it's falling apart and I'm unable to go through that space, there is a connectedness in that. And what part of our challenge is that when we separate it into its own pillar, it doesn't get dealt with together. And that's part of the conversations we've had in the past, is that people tend to try and separate urban management and security, and they're actually completely intertwined with one another. So it is very much the approach is looking at it holistically. And I do think we'll do a little bit of work in terms of how we communicate that moving forward, but it is very much the direction that we're going is looking at that holistic and resilient solutions that we're building.
Thanks very much indeed. I'm just going to take this opportunity that there are no more hands. I don't know, Wayne, you're nodding there, whether there's anything you want to add in, but I think what for me is so exciting is we've got this now bigger picture, this umbrella, and obviously the SIDS have been at this for years, but you know it, and they do need the collective clout. So when you're ready to talk to individual SID managers, but Mikhaela will also coordinate that. Thank you. Anything you wanted to add in before I shut you off?
And no. All I wanted to say is, guys, thank you very much for actually joining the movement. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. You realize that I just showed you phase 0, but some of these projects are going to overlap all the others. For example, the CCTV coverage. We're going to try and tackle everything. But before we lay down all the cameras and stuff, we need to make sure that we can protect them. We need to make sure that they are secure. We need to make sure that those cameras have got a backup plan, has got protection. We have got our patrols in place. That's why it was important for JMPD and the city to get their house in order, as well as the South African Police Services. Now they have found the synergy. And what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that they can complement one another, and then private security comes in and strengthens their hands. That's the plan. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And then whenever you need connectors, I think one of the things we're all very good at is connecting and facilitating those relationships. So wonderful. Thank you. Now